you very much, Marcus. Well, good morning, everybody. I apologise at the outset for the state of my voice. I can't seem to shake this off, but I want you to know that this morning's preach is sponsored by Yorkshire Tea, because this will keep me going in my Starbucks Christmas mug, which I use all year round, but it's having its moment now, so it's all good. So yes, if I get to the end of this message and I'm not making any sound anymore, you guys have really got a choice. So you could either just make me another cup of tea, or if you've had enough of me, you can just usher me off the stage. I really don't mind, it's all good. So this morning, I want to talk to you about the hope of Christmas. And there we are, wonderful. So we're nearly there, aren't we? I know it's cold this morning, but does anybody remember the rain that we had a few weeks ago? Hey, it was raining absolutely just non-stop for about a week. So, walking to school, loads of rain, massive puddles, walking Lucy to school. And got to the point where there was a huge puddle right outside school, and we had to basically run, because if we got caught, if anything drove through the puddle, we were just going to get absolutely saturated. So we got through the puddle, we got to safety, she got off to school, that was fine. And I'm standing round the corner and I'm thinking, that massive puddle is still there, and now because I'm round the corner, I can't see if anything's coming. What am I going to do? So the lollipop lady, God bless her, shouted across the road. She was across the road, all decked up in her high vis and her lollipop. She shouts across the road to me, "I'll watch out. I'll tell you when." So it must have looked very funny, because she's poised and I'm poised, and we're waiting to see what's happening with this traffic. And then she goes, "It's clear. Go, go, go." Now, if you can imagine Wonder Woman striding through battle with her sword and her shield, if you can imagine an elite female athlete going with the grace of a gazelle and the strength and the athleticism, that wasn't what it looked like at all. Go, go, go. I'm going. Thank you. Desperate times, desperate measures. Desperate times. We have that saying, don't we? Desperate times, desperate measures. It's a bit of a British thing, but it sums up life quite well sometimes, doesn't it? Desperate times, desperate measures. More recently, I've had some new prayers to pray as I've been driving around the corner to my parents-in-law. We've had some new challenges with them, bless them, and I've had some new prayers to pray. I've had to pray things like, "Lord, help me to have the strength that I need for this visit. Help me to have the physical strength. Help me to have the emotional strength. Help me to know what to say. Help me to know how to persuade them to get up out of bed, how to have food and drink." A couple of weeks ago, we had a bit of a situation where my father-in-law fell and we couldn't get him back up again. And from then, we've just had some new challenges with them. And it's been really, really hard. Sometimes things in life come from nowhere, don't they? Sometimes you get a bit of a warning, and sometimes you don't. And, God bless him. I'm grateful, actually, that I'm not doing as well as I could be on Slimming World, because I think the extra weight that I have at the minute helped me to just kind of pull him up that little bit more, bless him. But you feel vulnerable, don't you? You feel vulnerable sometimes in life, and sometimes things come and it takes your breath away. They get confused, they get distressed. We get confused, we get distressed. It can be really, really hard. Desperate times, desperate measures. I've had some mornings where I've woken up and, when you feel like the air just is coming out of your lungs, that moment of anxiety of, what are we going to do today? What will today bring? What will we need to do for them? What will the challenges be? Desperate times, desperate measures. And sometimes in those times, I don't feel warm and fuzzy. And sometimes in those times, the angels aren't singing. And the Bible verses aren't written across the ceiling. And sometimes I have to just think to myself, well, God is God, and here I am. And we're in desperate times and desperate measures. And you know, this morning, sometimes I'd said this in conversation earlier with Sarah, sometimes the best times in your life, in a funny kind of way, can be the times when your back is totally against the wall. And actually, you don't have anything. It's all got to be God, and God has to show up. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. And we read this time and time again in the Bible, where actually the moment of miracle and the moment of breakthrough is when you have got nothing else. Whether it's no voice, whether you're in a desperate situation with your in-laws, whatever it is, that is the time. That makes the room for God to move. Because it's not like you can say, well, it's me, I did that. Good old me, clever me with my skill, me with my ability. It makes room for God when we're in desperate times and desperate measures. And I want to tell you this morning about the God who is the Lord of desperate times and desperate measures. You see, God cares about you. He cares about your life. He cares about the state of the world. He knew everything that was going to happen this morning, for example. He knew way ahead of time because he is outside of time and he is Lord of time. And he knew from the beginning of everything that in 2022 we would have a fuel crisis, we would have a war in Ukraine, we would have desperate times. And God, in his wisdom and his power and his grace, is not fazed by those desperate times. God doesn't wake up in the morning, he doesn't wake up in the morning anyway, but if he did, he doesn't have the moment that I've had of, what's today going to bring? And I want you guys to just understand that this morning, because sometimes I think we can think of God almost like just a very big human person with a big beard, and he's very much like us. But actually, he's nothing like us because he's so much bigger than everything, and he's so much greater than everything, and he knows the end from the beginning. And I want to tell you this morning, and I'm glad that my date for preaching has come when it has, because I stand here this morning in desperate times. And I want to tell you about a God who is Lord over desperate times. And he brings desperate measures. It's the other half of our English saying, our funny little English saying, desperate times, desperate measures. He brings the measures. He takes the action. And we see this in the Christmas story. Oh, that's good tea. We see this in the Christmas story. This is Matthew chapter 1, verses 18 to 23 in the Message. The birth of Jesus took place like this. His mother Mary was engaged to be married to Joseph. Before they came to the marriage bed, that's a nice way of putting it, Joseph discovered that she was pregnant. It was by the Holy Spirit, but he didn't know that. Joseph, chagrined, oh dear, not very happy, but noble, determined to take care of things quietly so that Mary would not be disgraced. While he was trying to figure a way out, he had a dream. God's angel spoke in the dream. Joseph, son of David, don't hesitate to get married. Mary's pregnancy is spirit conceived. God's Holy Spirit has made her pregnant. She will bring a son to birth, and when she does, you, Joseph, will name him Jesus, meaning God saves, because he will save his people from their sins. This would bring the prophet's embryonic sermon to full term. Watch for this. A virgin will get pregnant and bear a son. They will name him Emmanuel, Hebrew for God is with us. Then Joseph woke up. He did exactly what God's angel commanded him in the dream. He married Mary, but he did not consummate the marriage, again a nice way of putting it, until she'd had the baby, and he named the baby Jesus. Desperate times and desperate measures. God sees the desperate state that the world is in, back then and now, and he brings the desperate measures. He doesn't send the assistant manager. He doesn't send the new trainee. He goes himself. He comes down to heaven. He comes down from heaven to earth. Emmanuel, God with us. God with us. And if you've been a Christian for any length of time, you'll know that sometimes we can get used to these things. Oh, yes, God with us. Oh, isn't it marvelous, the Christmas story? We read it every year. Isn't it lovely? And the angels and the shepherds. Oh, marvelous. And the kids dress up and it's all wonderful. But it's real. It happened. And we celebrate it, not because it's a cute, lovely thing that you can put on the stage, but because it makes a massive difference to humanity, to history, and to our individual lives. Because in a time of desperate times, God sends his son. God turns up in human flesh to come and bring life and hope to this earth. And that is an incredible thought. You know, we read the news, we watch the news on TV, however we access it, and it's hard to listen to, it's hard to read, it's hard to see the need that's in the world, it's hard to see the need in our own lives and in the lives of other people, and it can feel bleak and it can feel desperate. But God is the God of desperate times and desperate measures. He came down to earth. He took on flesh, as they say. He became a human. He took human form. He was fully human, fully divine. Nobody can really explain that. That's all right. Fully human, fully divine. God with us to bring us hope, to show us who he is, because he didn't want to be distant and away from us. He didn't want us to have to think, well, how does this really work? And what is God really like? He turned up. He turned up. He had a totally normal human experience. He was a baby. And he grew up and he became a man and he showed us who God is and what God is like so that we could have a relationship with him. So we didn't have to think to ourselves, well, I wonder how this is and I wonder if God really cares. He showed us how much he loves us by coming to earth and coming and taking on human form. God with us, Emmanuel. God of the desperate times and the desperate measures. And you know, in the Christmas story itself, there's plenty of desperate times, desperate measures. In those times and in that culture, Mary being pregnant before she was married could have ended up at best with social isolation, where she would have just been thrown out and just nobody could have anything to do with her, and she was out of the community and that was that. That would have been the good scenario. The much more likely scenario would have been that she would have been stoned to death. But she took that risk. She heard from God and she took that risk. Desperate times, desperate measures. They had to travel a long way to register for the census. There's not everybody obviously in this room that can identify with this, but anybody that's been heavily pregnant, even getting in the car is a job, isn't it? Towards the end, I was 12 days overdue with Sam, and I got to the point where people used to say to me, oh, look, you still haven't had the baby. And you think, no, I haven't. Get out of my face. Clearly I haven't. It's like a comedy bump here. It looks like I've got a pregnancy bump and then something else going on. But that, Mary would have traveled all that way on a donkey to make that journey. Desperate times, desperate measures. God understands about desperate times and desperate measures. They get to Bethlehem and there's no room. There's nowhere to go. And this is where sometimes when we have these, we see these Christmas cards and the nativity scene looks beautiful, doesn't it? And often it's got a little sprinkling of glitter on, hasn't it, if it's a Christmas card. And you think, oh, how lovely. Look at that, with the angel and, the cows are standing so nicely and everything looks so clean and wonderful and lovely and hygienic and all of that. And actually it wasn't. It was disgusting. Like, you're in a barn. She was in a barn having Jesus. Jesus was born into the most humble and lowly of situations. because God wanted to show up. God wanted to show up for each one of us, to show each one of us here and each one of us out of those doors how much he loves us and how much he is willing to reach out so that we can have a relationship with him. He is the God of desperate times and desperate measures. In his great love, he reached out to humanity because he knows that we need him. This is Matthew 2, verses 1 to 11 in the Message. After Jesus was born in Bethlehem village in Judah territory, this was during Herod's kingship, a band of scholars arrived in Jerusalem from the east. They asked around, "Where can we find and pay homage to the newborn King of the Jews? We observed a star in the eastern sky that signaled his birth. We're on pilgrimage to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all of Jerusalem with him. When he'd called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them where the Christ was to be born. "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied, "for this is what the prophet has written. But you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people Israel." After they'd heard this, they went on their way, and the star they'd seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. Desperate times, desperate measures. But what I'm talking about this morning is the hope that Christmas brings us. And I want us just to get a sense again of the wonder of Christmas and the wonder of what God has done. And sometimes that's easy to do. And sometimes, if we've been a Christian for a little bit of time, that's much harder to do. But this morning, I want us to just get a sense of it. Just as the three kings, the scholars, traveled all that way because the star was leading them to meet Jesus. And so this Christmas time, let's have that in our hearts. Let's make that pilgrimage in our hearts, that we look for Jesus, that we make the decision to wonder at him again and be wowed by him again. The light and the hope of Christmas. I don't know about you, but I'm a little bit done with these dark mornings. I really have had enough of it now. I don't know about anybody else. It doesn't actually seem to have any daylight now till about 8:10, which I just don't think is acceptable. I'm sorry. It's hard work, isn't it? Being in the dark is hard work. Everything is so much harder. You struggle to kind of navigate your way. If you're outside, there's no light. It's grim and it's horrible. We need the light. And that's what I love about this part of the Christmas story, the light that the star brought. They could follow that star because it was light. They followed it through the night sky. It wasn't, again, we think of the Christmas story and we think, well, they popped on their camels and they just, it was a few days. Maybe they stopped off for a McDonald's on the way. But actually, it was a very long time. They journeyed for a long time. It was several years, actually, because Herod took action, which we won't go into now, against kids under 2. So we know it was at least a couple of years. They had to travel. They traveled all that way, following the light to meet with Jesus. Light is a symbol of hope in the Bible. Jesus called himself the light of the world. And Jesus came into this world to bring us hope and to bring us light. And sometimes the most desperate emotions and desperate times can be symbolized by darkness, can't they? We talk about the darkness of the world. You watch the news and you think it's a very dark situation that we're in. But Jesus is the light, and Jesus came to bring the light. And we know, especially at this time of year, what a difference the light makes. the street lights shine so much brighter, don't they? The lovely Christmas lights shine so much brighter because it's so dark. Jesus, the light and the hope of the world. And when we talk about the hope that God brings us, it's a very different idea and it's a very different word from the hope that we use in the English language. So I don't know if this is a bit too soon, but I'm going to do it anyway. We hoped, nobody kill me, we hoped that England would get through yesterday, didn't we? I had a very frustrated and vocal husband that's usually very quiet and calm that was shouting at the TV yesterday, and I could hear him upstairs as well, and I was like, ooh, yes. But we hoped, didn't we? We didn't have any guarantees. It looked good because, correct me now, a lot of the good teams were out anyway, weren't they? And I'm not going to show my ignorance, but it looked, we could have done it. If we could have beaten France, we could have done it. But it was hope, wasn't it? We talk about hope. We talk about, I hope that England get through. I hope we get to the final. I hope that it's not going to snow. I hope that I get that good present at Christmas. I hope things work out. And that meaning of hope is very different to the Bible. That meaning of hope that we have is like, well, fingers crossed. Let's see how it goes. Let's not get too excited in case it doesn't work out. Let's just see what happens. That's hope, isn't it? That's our understanding of hope. And this is where, if you're super clever like Sean and you've studied biblical languages, this is where it helps. Because actually, in the original Greek in the Bible, the word hope, as is translated, actually means something totally different. It's got a totally different dynamic to it. And it's the opposite almost of what we have in the English language, because hope in the Bible is assurance. That's it. I hope, I have hope. You don't need to know anything else. You don't need to ask any more questions. We're not doing anything. We're not having to see anything. We're not having to see how it goes. We're not going to have to keep our fingers crossed. It's done. We have that assurance. And that is the hope of Christmas, the hope that God brings into our lives. It's assurance. It's done and dusted. It's sorted. So that situation that you're believing God for is sorted. It's done. Might take a little bit longer than you like to get sorted in the kind of earthly realm, but it's done. God's got it and God's sorted it. That is the hope. That is the assurance that God brings us. We have hope in God because he's trustworthy. The things that he says are truth. Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is being sure of what we hope for and certain of what we do not see. We put our faith in a lot of things, don't we? You're putting your faith right now in the chair that you're sitting on. You're putting your faith in the floor that chair is on. You're putting your faith in your car starting. You're putting your faith in all sorts of things every day in life. We wouldn't be able to function if we didn't put our faith, our trust in things. But actually, the greatest person that we can put our faith in is God. Because he is the God of desperate times, desperate measures. He is the one that maybe when it felt like nobody else cared, nobody else noticed, he came down and he took action and he turned up and he showed us what he is like because he sent his son as a baby for the hope of Christmas. The hope we have in God means that we can trust him to work things out, even when we don't know what that answer is. I don't know about you, I am a ridiculous planner, actually. It probably gets to ridiculous levels. I like to know. I like to know 5 years ahead, actually, if you wouldn't mind. If that would be okay, I would be perfectly happy with that. And I don't always understand that other people don't work like that. That throws me. But I like to know. I like to have the answer. Why is it like it is? When Tim and I had Sam, the midwife actually told us to throw the baby book away because we were like, but the baby book says this and the baby's not doing that. And we wanted the answer. And the midwife said, you can't always have all the answers. Put the book in the bin and just get on with it. But we like to have the answers, don't we? And sometimes in life, we don't always have the answers. Some things, some situations, we might not get the answer to until we get to heaven. But God has the answer. And God is the one that we can hope in, even when that answer is not obvious, even when we don't understand what the answer is, even when it's not coming. We can have our hope and our assurance in God. The hope that we have in God means that we can face the future with confidence and not with fear. And with all the uncertainty that's going on in life at the minute, that's a biggie, isn't it? Some people wondering if they can heat their homes, some people wondering if they can meet the needs of their families. The hope that we have in God means that we can face the future with confidence and not in fear. The hope we have in God means that we can feel peaceful even in the most chaotic of situations, because we have that assurance, we have that peace that God is with us. When I was having to help my elderly father-in-law up, and I was wondering if I was going to have to phone my friend for her to send her husband, Big Dave, clues in the name, to come and help me, I still felt peaceful, even though it was chaotic, even though it was sudden, even though it was a nightmare, even though it was a mess. I still had that peace because I knew that God was with us. I knew that God was there. I'm sure Mary, in that situation, in that stable, where it wasn't all neat and tidy, where there wasn't a sprinkling of glitter, life was not perfect, I'm sure she felt peaceful because she knew that God was with her. Sometimes we have to dig for that peace. Sometimes we have to get still for a minute and let God speak that peace to us. But it is there, and he does offer that to us. And the hope that we have in God means that we can share this good news with the world. This week we were praying, we were giving thanks actually in the prayer meeting, and it was amazing. It made me cry actually, just giving thanks for the things that this church is doing. And we were praying for the hub and we were praying for the lounge, and I had the opportunity to come in this week, had a bit of time, and it was just amazing, the hope that we were able to offer to people. They were able to walk through the door and, have some soup, have some food, go and do their shop, have some company. It was absolutely brilliant. And God has come to give us hope. And then our job is to go and show and offer that hope to other people. And what I love about the church is we don't have to do that by ourselves, but we do it as a team. And what was lovely about the lounge and the food hub this week when I came to visit was there were different people coming in. And some people come to this church and aren't even necessarily that frequent in this church, but they were volunteering. And it was absolutely fantastic. And there were people that are kind of more long-standing members that were cooking, of course, Gary, with his green soup. And it was a fantastic team effort. And that's what I love so much about church. And that's what I love so much about the hope of Christmas. It is an individual thing. God gives us the hope, but we also carry that hope together. And we also offer that hope to the community that we serve. I am so glad that we are not here as a little exclusive club, that we just exist for ourselves, we just do what we need for our own benefit. I'm glad that we exist for the sake of people that haven't joined us yet, that haven't walked through these doors yet. And I am so glad that we can offer them that hope, and we can show them that hope through practical ways and through love. So what does Christmas mean for us today, 2,000 years after the event? It means that we have hope. It means that we know in desperate times that God has taken desperate measures. That when our backs are against the wall, God knows that, and that is not a problem for him because he owns the wall and he's bigger than the wall, and actually he can come and do the impossible when we cannot, because he is the God of desperate times and desperate measures. And also it means that we have hope. Even when it feels dark, even when our own circumstances feel dark, we have the light of Jesus to help us. And we don't have the kind of hope where the minute you post your Christmas card and you hope it's going to get there. We are not sure about that one at the minute, are we? But that's not it. We're not into Royal Mail hope. Don't get cross with me, Royal Mail workers. We're not into fingers crossed hope, but we are into God hope, that is the assurance, that is the done deal. It is sorted, it is finished. He has done it. As I close, I'm going to read to you from Isaiah 9. This is a famous Christmas reading, isn't it? But I want to just read something else about the light, and then I want to tell you about something that you might have noticed under your chairs. I'm going to have another drink before I do anything. Isaiah 9, verse 2. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death. And then verse 6. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. That's Jesus. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal, the enthusiasm, the power of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. And it all starts in that manger where life isn't perfect, where life is mucky, where there's really no sprinkling of glitter anywhere to be seen. There's not even any cleanliness, not even any clean spots to be seen. That's where it starts, and that is the power of God that reaches out to us, that we can have that relationship with him. Under your chair, there is a tea light, and I didn't hand these out at the beginning because I didn't want to steal the thunder of any carols by candlelight in future weeks. But it's a little gift from me to you, and I would like you to take it home, and I would like you to just take a moment. You're welcome. Take a moment when you have a moment to light it, and just remember what I've talked about this morning, what I've shared with you about the hope of Christmas, and the fact that light symbolizes hope, and the fact that hope in God's vocabulary means assurance. And actually that whatever challenges you are facing in your life, God has got them. And God has already sorted it. And you're just going to see the working out of that. And you can trust him. He is totally trustworthy. And you can put your hope in him because he is your light. He will bring light in the darkness. So please take those home and just please have a moment and just remind yourself that God is your light today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for watching The Preach. It has been an amazing morning, and we would love to see you in the week at any of our events. So stay up to date on our social media, on our website. Keep checking because we update things all the time. We have so much going on, and we'd love to see you there. Have a great week.